Good afternoon. Welcome to Afternoons on FNR Football Nation Radio. Some Champions League results from overnight. There are some arguments taking place in European football. We'll bring to your attention shortly. A couple of feel-good stories as well, and we'll look ahead to all the weekend action to come. Stay tuned. We're getting underway very shortly. Hello and welcome to Afternoons on FNR Football Nation Radio, your voice of football here in Australia and also right around the world. Welcome to the program from wherever you are tuned in from. Say hello to us if you are with us on Facebook Live. We look forward to chatting with you throughout the next hour. Of course, we are with you for the next 2 hours right across our website, footballnationradio.com. Our app, get on board that if you aren't already. And we're also live on TuneIn Radio. A warm welcome to you all. Lots to get through, Rick, in the next hour. Some big stories overnight and some results this morning, local time in Australia, in terms of the UEFA Champions League. Some European fixtures to look forward to, as well as the countdown to the Champions League and Europa League group stage draw. Well, what are we? 8 days away now. So lots of action to come. Lots of action overnight. Get us underway with all of the things making news, please.
Thank you, and good afternoon to all the listeners and viewers. Let's start with, there's been plenty, and I mean plenty, of contract extension news released overnight, with 3 players across Europe choosing to stay at their respective clubs. PSG, the French capital club, they have re-signed Angel Di Maria, their midfielder, until 2021. Juventus have contracted Miralem Pjanic until 2023, and Lazio striker Ciro Immobile for the same time span. It has been revealed that Ligue 1 side Lille will need to raise a further €30 million in player sales in the next 10 days in order to meet French financial watchdog regulations. This is after already having to sell several players over the current transfer window. Bayern Munich have agreed to pay the damages caused by their travelling fans during their 1-0 German Cup win over FC Dortmund Assel. Receipt paper was thrown onto the venue, as well as damage to stand and fences, and this all equates to about €6,000. So a small little fee, but nonetheless they will be covering costs. The owners of Saudi Arabian club Al Ittihad, Ibrahim Al-Balawi, has approached Sampdoria president Massimo Ferrero to buy the club. Big news. Ferrero has some debt issues to sort out and has until October 15 to stop his movie theatre, Cinema Adriano, in Rome, from being repossessed. And finally, we'll save a little good news story for a little bit in the second hour, or the second part of the day. David Beckham will actually be getting a UEFA President's Award in 2018 next week in Monaco, whilst the Champions League draw is going on, to recognise his soccer achievements and his humanitarian work.
There you go. Wonderful stuff, Rick. Very well done. We have a big hour in store to come. We will welcome Damon Palmar into the set now as we continue our discussion of all things European football. Welcome to you, Damon. Of course, there were Champions League fixtures this morning. We'll get through those results quickly before getting back to those big news stories of contract extensions, Rick. Enormous. Very, very significant indeed, because those 3 players were all strongly linked with moves away over the summer and in previous seasons as well. So good for their respective clubs, PSG, Juve and Lazio, to tie them down. But those results from this morning, obviously this is the first leg. Keep in mind, 3 fixtures this morning were played, 3 to come tomorrow morning or tomorrow evening, wherever you are in the world. So 6 teams to join the 26 already qualified for the group stage of the 2018-19 UEFA Champions League competition. Now, we'll preview the matches tomorrow morning in our second hour. As for the results this morning, guys, Bate Borisov 2, PSV 3. Interesting game here. Bate and PSV, well, not regulars in the Champions League, but certainly have had their experience over the past decade. PSV with a crucial win on the road and getting the win in the last minute of play. Incredible that a former veteran, no, not a former veteran, a veteran now, a former superstar of Barcelona, still playing at Bate. Now, I knew this. We discussed this off air before we went on air. He actually scored. I'll let one of you I will let one of you do the talking here. But he did get on the score sheet, but he has not played too regularly for the Belarusian side, Bate here. But nevertheless, he finished 2-3 PSV with the crucial win on the road ahead of the second leg at home in 6 days' time.
It just makes it incredibly now very hard if you're a Bate fan and you think they are still going to make the Champions League group stage. Coming back with having had an away victory for PSV, almost nigh on impossible here. So unfortunately, Bate, you're going to have to be relegated to the Europa League in this case for this season. But PSV, just starting to wind up the gears a little bit more, get into actually proper football mode. Obviously, we've seen their start in the Eredivisie. They're just getting a little bit better and better. And now, obviously, they've clicked into gear ahead of the Champions League group stage.
Yeah, the thing that I took out of it was the 3 away goals. Rick, I know you've spoken how important away goals are and in these Champions League ties. So 3 away from home for PSV, including the 89th minute winner. So a great result for them.
And talk to me about this ageing veteran who has come back and scored for Bate Borisov here on 88 minutes, which momentarily made it 2-2.
Yes, Alexander Hleb, of course,
Incredible.
a former Arsenal and Barcelona player. This is his 5th stint at Bate Borisov. His first one was back in 1999.
Wow.
He's now back there in 2018 for the 5th time. Incredible.
Has a very strong tie, obviously, to the club. Very strong.
That is amazing. And obviously, well, yeah, that's right. His 4th stint this decade, his 5th stint in his career, and his first goal since his 2nd stint, which is in 2012-13. So incredible for the player who, of course, yes, made his name at Arsenal and before that at Stuttgart, and then spent a season, he was on the books at Barcelona for 4 years, but spent a season there and then was loaned back to Stuttgart, Birmingham, Wolfsburg. So a player with really significant experience, of course. Former Belarus international, 77 caps and 6 goals. Good to see him get on the score sheet. Maybe an important goal, but obviously they then conceded a moment later, and that will be very, very difficult to overturn, you would think. Elsewhere, Benfica 1, PAOK 1. This was probably the match of the entire round. I think PAOK, given what they did last year and what they were able to do in Greece for, well, in what was a controversial season given what took place off the field. Nevertheless, on the field, very talented side. They went behind on the stroke of half-time due to a penalty, but then they fought back, 1-1. I think they're in the box seat now, maybe cause an upset here against Benfica.
The away goal. That's the very crucial thing. Obviously, Benfica, you would say, are the favourites out of the two teams, if you look at them on paper and the strength of both sides, but PAOK have that away goal. We cannot underestimate how crucial that goal is in the grand scheme of things, especially if you want to qualify. It just means now Benfica need at least 1, if not 2, to take this game to extra time or even possibly qualify automatically for the group stage.
Yeah, I agree. Again, that away goal is so important from PAOK to come from 1-0 down as well, away from home against Benfica, who feature regularly in the Champions League. They're one of the big boys of Portuguese football. PAOK obviously haven't been in the Champions League for quite some time. So, again, I think it's a great result for the away side here.
Yeah, absolutely. Benfica certainly regulars in that competition. That's why this would be a surprise to some extent if they were to be eliminated. Of course, Benfica are the interesting side here for Liverpool fans, because should Benfica take care of PAOK in the return, Liverpool will actually be a pot 3 side in the Champions League draw. Should PAOK win, Liverpool will be a pot 2 side. And again, given the depth of the Champions League, you'd certainly want to be a pot 2 side for Liverpool this time around, because if not, the Champions League finalists could find themselves in a fairly tricky group, being a pot 3 club. But we'll know that confirmed by about this time next week. The final match, 0-0 between Crvena Zvezda, or Red Star Belgrade, and Salzburg. 0-0 delicately poised. Despite no away goals, I still think Salzburg will get the job done in the return match in a week's time.
And if they repeat what they were able to do last season in the Europa League, you would think they should just get it done.
Of course.
Maybe a 1-0, 2-1 type result.
Very impressive in the Europa League last season, weren't they? So, look, lots of football to come. A reminder of the fixtures tomorrow morning. We will preview these later on in the program. But Ajax Dinamo Kiev, Vidya from Hungary against Ajax Athens, and Young Boys host Dinamo Zagreb. Again, only 6 spots remain. 3 from today, 3 from tomorrow.
Well, as you just mentioned one of the teams, Ajax. They do obviously play tomorrow morning against Dinamo Kiev, but there's been some really positive and really uplifting news overnight that has come out, and that is in relation to a player that hasn't been seen on the pitch for the best part of a season and a half, if not 2 seasons. And I'm obviously referring here to Abdelhak, nicknamed Appy Nouri. He went into a coma 2 seasons ago. He had collapsed on the pitch during a pre-season. The family have actually given us an update, and it is all positive news. So it's great to hear. He is improving daily. Let's hope that he can recover and fully recover and see him on the pitch one day.
Yeah, incredible. After a year-long coma, has just woken up and has started to communicate with family, and there are whispers suggesting that he's making strong progress, recognises people, and it's a wonderful outcome, isn't it? After what would have been a very difficult period for the family and obviously teammates, both past and those still playing at Ajax. Of course, he was a player that Justin Kluivert, who's just signed for Roma. Obviously, they were teammates there at Ajax, and they were very close. And Kluivert actually is wearing the same number that Nouri were at Ajax, which I believe is the 37. So, look, obviously uplifting for everyone involved, but what was a very sad story, maybe with a positive end there, given the youngster who is still only, I think, 21 years of age. 21 years of age. So, yeah, very sad, but very positive and very pleasing to hear that there is some progress. Now, just quickly, everyone's come through here. Ajax play a team I've never heard of. Important not to take them lightly. Well, you can't take anyone lightly at this stage, can you? It's a very, very difficult period. And Ajax have got here as a result of what they've done, as have the opponents from Hungary. So looking forward to all the action tomorrow, which we will review, of course, the following day. And we will preview again later in the program. Let's get to those big contract signings, because I think these are quite significant, given the fact that these players were all linked strongly away from their clubs at various times throughout the recent transfer period, which is, well, in the case of Di Maria and Paris Saint-Germain, certainly still open. Now, Di Maria is where we'll start. He's been linked away from Paris Saint-Germain for, well, I'd suggest the entirety of his time there, following the arrival of, obviously, Neymar and Mbappe and other players who have been in the fold that he's played with. He's played with all the greats. Yep. It's always felt that maybe Di Maria was the one who they could cash in on to invest in more. He has committed himself to the club until 2021, which, again, in the modern-day game, it doesn't really mean too much. But the fact that they've put pen to paper on Di Maria, I believe, another sign of maturity from this PSG board and the hierarchy there at the club. We've seen them put their faith into keeping hold of Neymar, keeping hold of Mbappe for now. And I really like the direction of keeping Di Maria, building with him, with these youngsters coming through. And I think that's a great decision for player and for club. Because my question with Di Maria would be, had he not been at Paris Saint-Germain, well, where else could he have played to bring out the best in his football?
And we can't really say Real Madrid anymore, can we? Because he was there all those years ago before he transferred across to Manchester United. So that rules out someone who needed a left wing or a left midfield option. There goes that one. Bayern Munich may have come up on the radar, but at the same time, do they really want to replace Frank Ribery with someone who's going to be the best part of 30? So you would say, no. There goes already your two big teams, your two big options that you would actually have said would have taken the Argentine on.
He's a stunning player, though, Di Maria. I mean, the time at Manchester United, I recall strongly. He started like a house on fire and then decided, well, it appeared, I don't like England that much, and he just decided not to play very well. He was the... From my memory, he had provided the most assists in the first 10 rounds of the season. He was scoring. He was doing everything. One of the best players in the Premier League. And then it just seemed to have lost a bit of interest, fallen out of favour a little bit. And it was very underwhelming for United in the end and had a fairly poor season. So while disappointed with that, he's certainly showed that he's still got the qualities to play at the highest level.
Seems to be a common theme at United, players not fitting in. I still think Di Maria is the most underrated footballer in the world. And I think you mentioned contracts don't necessarily mean a lot, but I think this still is a positive sign for Paris Saint-Germain, just with the uncertainty around Mbappe and Neymar if they were to depart in 12 or 24 months. So I think potentially locking him in is great in their quest for the UEFA Champions League. Yeah,
that's right. And that is a valid point, because Neymar and Mbappe are still linked away for next season, or at least one. Who cares who, but one may. So the fact that they have committed to Di Maria means that, well, they still have, yes, one of the most underrated players in world football in their attacking ranks.
And when you also throw in the likes of Adrien Rabiot, who has been mentioned all summer long with a move away predominantly to Barcelona has been the big link. But if it is that his contract is allowed to expire in 12 months' time, well, they need obviously someone and to show that they are genuine contenders beyond just next season. They need someone who will really commit to the club, and I think this is a great move, as both of you were pointing out.
No, I think that's a great move indeed, and certainly now it builds, look, not that they needed to any further, but it adds further credibility to their cause of potentially winning this UEFA Champions League, which has avoided them forever. Now
one less headache.
Well, one less headache. That's right. Look, this is a huge season for Di Maria. It's a huge season for Paris Saint-Germain, and they will really want to capitalise and win this thing. Look, we have discussed it before, but who needs it most? Just out of curiosity, who needs the Champions League most this season to really put a tick next to their name that they're desperately after? Is it Juventus, who have gone out and bought the best player on the planet? Is it Paris Saint-Germain, who have invested so much money, not for so little return, but for so little success where they actually want it, in the fact that they haven't even made a semi-final yet of this competition? Is it Manchester City, who have arguably the best manager in world football, but still haven't cracked the Champions League final, whereas Liverpool did last year, who they were much better against, or not head-to-head, but in the Premier League? Or is there someone else out there who really, really needs this Champions League title this season?
I think it's still Juventus. Just given the fact they don't have the best record in finals. Obviously, they have lost 2 in the last 4 or 5 years. They've added Ronaldo, best player in the world. They brought back Bonucci. I think they are the most desperate out of those clubs that you mentioned.
Sure, but you don't think that the financial pressures that Paris Saint-Germain and Manchester City have made and the investments they've made in recent seasons, sure, Juve have been there and have failed, but at least they've been there in the finals. Whereas Paris Saint-Germain particularly, well, quarter-final at best, and they haven't been there that often. It's normally round of 16 and out. Manchester City have got close, but just not close enough. I would argue one of them just purely due to the investment, the continual investment in recent seasons.
Yeah, for me, I was going to say it's one of the Sheikh brothers. It's one of the two, whether it be the one at PSG or whether it be the one at Man City. You can't invest the best part of $1 billion, if not more, between
for no
them
return.
For essentially no return. And we all understand that they're not going to make that money back if they win the Champions League. But it just goes and builds on that foundation going forward. If you had to split hairs, well, who spent the most? For me, I think it is Man City over PSG, but it's
it's Man City.
But it's not by much, because obviously the 2 big purchases that PSG made almost equates to the best part of 10 to 12 of the other players. But nonetheless, I think for me, Man City, that little bit edge, if I had to give it an edge over the two, it'd be Man City over PSG.
All right. We'll have your say. We're live on Facebook. You can also tweet us at FNR_radio. Which club has the most pressure on them to win the UEFA Champions League this season? Really interested to see what people have to say. And Rick, maybe a discussion point for later next week when the Champions League draw is on. Let's get to one of those sides in Juventus, because Miralem Pjanic has extended his contract till 2023. We did bring you these details yesterday, suggesting that this would be very likely to take place this week. He has extended till 23, which is a 2-year extension on top of what he already had. And now he becomes the 4th highest earning player in the Italian top flight. 6.5 million euro per season. That is a long way behind the top, Ronaldo, 30 million euro per season. Second is Higuain at Milan, and then third is Dybala with 7 million. So he's the 3rd highest paid player at Juve, 4th highest paid player in the competition, and deservedly so for one of the best midfielders on the planet. But, of course, was strongly linked to Man City, to Barcelona, to Paris Saint-Germain this summer. Another good move by Juventus there, I think, to keep hold of one of their best players. And obviously, in light of the links to Paul Pogba, to Milinkovic-Savic of Lazio for big, big money, I think this is the smartest decision that they could have made at this point.
I absolutely agree. I mean, considering what Pjanic has done, his body of work the last, 5-6 seasons across the Serie A, astounding. And when you have a list of those teams that you just read out, Adrian, chasing you and willing to throw money, and I'm not talking about, your 50 to 60 to sort of cover what Juventus have spent on him the last 2 seasons. We're talking the best part of 80, 90, 100 million euros just to transfer him across to that new team for more success. It just goes to show how strong a financial position Juventus are now seeing themselves in, and what they can even do, I think, with him in the team. Well, anything is possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think if this was 2 or 3 years ago, I think he may have gone. Just Juventus wouldn't have had as much sort of power that you talked about to hold on to their players, such as when Pogba left to rejoin Manchester United. And also Pjanic, like you said, well deserved. He's been a fantastic servant for Juventus. I'd put him up there with one of, if not the most important player at the club, is that integral role in the midfield. And he will go a long way to helping Juve break their Champions League drought.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a very interesting point, Damon, actually, regarding Juve holding on to their talent. Now, I've made it clear regularly recently that I think Manchester United, when we talk about them trying to hold on to the glory days without accepting where they're at and returning to the pinnacle, need to follow a similar model that, for example, Liverpool have done. Now, I think Juve are a club that probably haven't reached the lows, well, in the recent decade anyway, that United have, AC Milan have, Inter Milan have. I don't think that they've ever been that low, but you are right in the fact that if this was 2 or 3 seasons ago, Juve would have lost Pjanic here to a bigger boy. Yep. But Juve have now got themselves, maybe now the cherry on the cake is obviously Ronaldo arriving, but prior to that, even so last season, they've got themselves to a position now where, well, why would I want to leave this club for another club? What is the lure of me leaving one of the best clubs on the planet now? And Juve have got themselves back into that top echelon of clubs. They do need to win the Champions League now to really consolidate themselves right up the top. But you're spot on here. Pjanic, there was no option but to remain with the Bianconeri, given where the current project is at.
And that's what sort of struck me about the whole Gonzalo Higuain and Mattia Caldara moves to Milan, is both were sort of hinting that they really didn't want to leave, considering who had just arrived in the project that was being put to them in front of them as pre-season training was about to commence. And it sort of also reminded me, just as you mentioned, that when Higuain was actually leaving the Juventus door for the final time, where he touched and kissed the crest, it just meant that much to him.
Of course.
So it just goes to show how important this project is and how important Miralem Pjanic is to this project, that they've obviously had to sacrifice 2 other names in order for him to remain.
No doubt. The other one in the Italian Serie A you mentioned, Ciro Immobile, 2023 extension as well at Lazio. I like this for Lazio, obviously keeping hold of Milinkovic-Savic and now Immobile, their 2 best players. It means to me, it tells me, they're serious about getting back to the Champions League. They're serious and they're confident they can finish in the top 4. Whether or not they're actually capable of pulling that off, I have my doubts. I still think there are 4 or 5 other clubs ahead of them. But positive signs, if you're a Lazio fan, I suppose, for building purposes going forward. Now, Lazio they did win a championship this century.
Many, many years ago.
Yeah, the first one of the century, the 99-2000 championship. So they haven't had much success since then. And look, they're probably not going to join a Juventus at the summit of Italian football and potentially European football, but they certainly can become a regular Champions League contender in terms of finishing in the top 4 and maybe challenging to get out of a group consistently. If they can keep their core together, they've got the ability to do that. So I think exciting from a Lazio perspective, but can they now take it to the next level and get to the level where they're a consistent top 4 side in Italy? I think the only way is by keeping hold of their 2 main men, and I suppose this is the right start.
Absolutely. I mean, you're not going to sell somebody who scored you 29 goals last season. If you can retain that player, like we've just mentioned, you go halfway to actually getting anywhere near there. So now that they've been able to keep him and they've signed him up for, I think it's about $3 and a bit million a season, so he really won't be in a hurry to leave.
No.
He's on good money. He's scoring for fun, as we saw on the weekend against Napoli when he opened the scoring in that match. Good luck to anybody trying to stop him, and good luck to Lazio possibly even making a Champions League spot.
Yeah, I think if you're a Lazio fan, you'd be happy to see retaining Immobile and Milinkovic-Savic. I just question in 12 months' time, in 2 years' time, whether they still will hold on to those players. I don't think they'll hold on to Milinkovic-Savic. I think he will go. And so therefore, I have my doubts as to whether they can consistently finish in the top 4. I think it's a possibility this season, but beyond, I'm not so sure.
Well, when you factor in also, they've still got Luis Alberto, who was their other big winger that really came on last season. Unfortunately, they did lose Felipe Anderson to West Ham. So if all of a sudden the team can somehow find a few other pieces just to sort of help out and sort of come together, top 4 is not out of the realm of possibility, despite who is actually chasing them and despite the amount of money that those teams have actually spent.
Obviously disappointing opening match day for Lazio, going down 1-2 at home to Napoli, and they travel to Juventus this weekend, so it doesn't get any easier for them, but certainly they'll be up there. They will be up there because they've got a very, very solid squad. Now, the final one in Italy from the headlines, Rick, Ferrero Sampdoria sold to a Saudi club, potentially. So from what I'm reading from what you've mentioned in the headlines, Ferrero's involved in a few different ventures, and the Cinema Adriano in Rome you mentioned is one of those. Okay, very nice. Lots of Italian owners and presidents have found themselves caught up in different worlds. For example, Silvio Berlusconi was the leader of the nation and also was the owner of the biggest network and was the owner and president of AC Milan. And there are many others who, De Laurentiis at Napoli, similarly is involved in the movie game. And, well, everyone finds ways to keep busy there. But this is causing some issues here because they are obviously under a few financial constraints at the moment, a few issues taking place there. Where the reports are at the moment, how close is something like this to taking place, and what would be the implications for those at Sampdoria?
So it's a 50-50 call at this stage. And why it's 50-50 is there's a few little factors that need to be taken into consideration. With Ferrero, the president himself, he has about 30 to 40 million euros to clear off his books. And this is why his cinema that's named after the person to my left in Rome, so the Cinema Adriano in Rome, that may be repossessed. So that's one issue that there is. And obviously there is someone who is interested in purchasing the club. Around about 200 million is the word that's been mentioned, 200 million euro that is. But the person that wants to buy it, as we've mentioned, is Saudi. Now, there are a few issues with trying to get large sums of money out of Saudi Arabia because the Crown Prince, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, is basically stopping these moves from happening. He wants to obviously keep the funds internal. So, a few little factors, but this one has some legs. It's how many legs they ultimately develop by the deadline that Ferrero needs to actually have his money by that will be the ultimate determinator for me.
Okay, well, we will keep you posted on that. Interesting to see if some further foreign investment comes into the Italian game there at Sampdoria. Of course, Sampdoria, unfortunately, not in action at the weekend. They'll get their campaign underway this weekend on match day 2. Those other two stories off the top, Bayern Munich looking to pay €6,000 for damages caused by their travelling fans. I think that's expected. €6,000 isn't too much for a club of Bayern Munich's stature, so good on them for that. And Lille. Just quickly, explain this one to me in a little more depth. So Lille needing to raise 30 million further in player sales to meet the French financial watchdog, as you mentioned. So firstly, any relation to the financial fair play, or is this more of an internal domestic issue that they've got on their hands?
So it's a bit of both. In order in France, especially after the whole PSG financial fair play saga, the watchdog, which is known as the DNCG, was implemented. So all of a sudden, in order for teams to obviously compete in Europe, if they are from Liga, they have to pass the DNCG before they can pass the UEFA FFP.
Sure.
So it's a two-stage process. The DNCG, which is the French one, basically says, if you're not compliant, you're not playing, period. So this is what's happened now. All of a sudden is Lille have to raise another 30 million euros between now and the next 10 days, so the 31st of August, in order to comply or face a punishment. So what that means is if they don't, they can't play a whole heap of their new signings.
Okay.
So all of a sudden...
That would be a disaster.
Loic Remy, Raphael and Jeremy Piet do not play, which is an issue already because if you've obviously sold off a few players, you've tried to replace them. That's one issue. On top of that, you've also got a few other people that want to move away, and there's a couple of things that all of a sudden could be happening. There's Nicolas Pepe, who is their centre forward, who might be able to join, and this would alleviate all the pressure, that he might be able to join Borussia Dortmund for 30 million euro. If that happens, Borussia Dortmund get their striker, their centre forward, Lille have no DNCG or FFP issues. That's going to be the key one all of a sudden because you would think Pepe has the most market value. You could also throw in maybe Adama Sonanoro. He'd be the other one that might have a little bit of value, but may not raise the 30 million in one hit. So it might be the case, you know what? We've talked about it before, but someone at the bottom end has to be sacrificed. It might be the case that Pepe is the one that gets sacrificed. Guess who his agent also happens to be?
Who's his agent?
One man that has been very prominent at Wolverhampton this summer. One man that also happens to also be the agent of one Cristiano Ronaldo.
Mendes.
Jorge Mendes.
There you go.
Telling me this move will not happen? I guarantee it will.
Very interesting developments there from our resident French football expert, Rick D'Andrea. Great stuff there. Now let's move on to some other news around the world let's stay in France while we're there. The Balotelli saga has come to a close. We confirmed this yesterday that he will be remaining at Nice. Great for Nice because they thought they were losing him. But Marseille failed to sign him, and this is the club in France who wanted him, according to reports, failed to sign him by less than a couple of million of euros. I don't understand this. In the modern game that we live in and that we consume and absorb and love, less than €2 million has been the difference between a club like Marseille, who were playing European football, who played a Europa League final not so long ago, and they didn't have €2 million to spend on a player who they thought, well, according to reports, they were strongly linked to, and now it's come out confirming it was, that they didn't have an extra $2 million to spend on this player. Yeah. That is baffling for me.
And when you consider, I think the president from Nice River actually said literally, €4 to €5 million
as the entire transfer fee.
As the entire transfer fee would have been enough.
Well, I don't understand.
Yeah, I can't believe it. I don't understand how they can't fork out an extra $2 million, and like you said, $4 to $5 million total in a relatively inflated market that we are in now in football.
So we're doing some simple mathematics here. So they wanted 4 to 5. So let's just say it was 4 they would have been happy with. So you're telling me that Marseille offered $2.5, $3 million, and they couldn't up it by $1 million.
Correct.
It's peanuts.
And when you think
that's strange.
And when you think about it, how much did they actually spend on players to arrive at the club? Well, they really only bought 2. The others were sort of free transfers and end of loans. They bought, obviously, Kaleta Carr, the left back, for €19 million.
Yep.
There's one. And Jordan Amavi, guess how much? $10 million.
Okay.
So you're talking about less than half of a centre-back's transfer fee for your striker, or for a striker who has proven himself the last couple of years in Spain, France.
I don't understand that. I do not understand that. And obviously, a striker who is capable of scoring lots of goals, and when they've got a busy schedule again with European football, well, why you wouldn't make that investment, I'm not so sure, but he will play at Nice this season. I said yesterday it will be like a new signing for Vieira, because didn't think he'd be able to call on his services at Nice, and I think it's a club that has brought out the best in Balotelli, and I still think he has some room to improve, because now he will be recalled to the Italian national team under Roberto Mancini. Make no mistake about it. Next month, UEFA Nations League, Italy take on Portugal and Poland. He will be in the squad. He'll start, he'll play, and he'll be key to Mancini in the early stages at least. And if he can develop and gain some confidence, I tell you what, 12 months' time from now, he'll be on the move to a bigger club in a bigger competition. And I'm not saying he's going to return to a top club, but I can certainly see him making the move. Probably back to Italy makes the most sense, but I can see him making a move somewhere that will, again, bring him back onto the European scale, maybe back into the UEFA Champions League as well. And I guess that was what the move in the Champions League, the move to Marseille in the first place was for, because keep in mind, these rumours started at the back end of last season. Marseille was still playing their football, and I guess there was some confidence around that Marseille would make the Champions League. And I'm not saying that that's the reason why Balotelli wasn't acquired in the end, because the reason why was because Marseille didn't have €1.5 million. Regardless, so I think it will be a beneficial move for the player once he's back at the level he wants to be.
Just so strange. I mean, they sold Anguissa to Fulham for the best part of 30 million or something, or 25 to 30 million, more or less on English transfer deadline day. How can they not find 4 to 5?
Fulham spent over £100 million this summer, and Marseille didn't have an extra €1.5 million.
I mean, I understand that Marseille is focusing on a stadium redevelopment, and the best part of 50 million, more or less.
Yeah, but Rick, if you can pick up a player for that little, and a player who, yes, maybe a handful, but a player that could deliver at his highest level would be better than most players in Ligue 1.
Could you imagine him all of a sudden, Flavian Turvan, Dimitri Payet and Ocampos in a 4-man attack?
I was trying to imagine it and didn't take place. Unfortunate. All right.
You reckon there's now any chance? Now that all the comments have come out and everyone's said their piece, you reckon there might be a last-ditch play? Here's the $5 million. Let's get this issue over and done with. Do we need a new striker?
Not after Nice publicly declared he's staying.
Yeah, on social media they posted that he's staying.
You don't think there's no possible backhand hijack move type chance that we've seen?
Highly doubt it.
No way. No way. It would be the most ridiculous set of circumstances if he were to stay now. But anyway, I suppose we were certain he was leaving. And he was certain he was leaving. Who knows? We're not ruling anything out there at all. While we are in France, I do have a couple more things to get through before we move on. Paris Saint-Germain. Now, Paris Saint-Germain, of course, one of the clubs that obviously they kept hold of their main man, Di Maria, or one of their main men. They missed out on Pjanic, a play they were linked to, but they are incredibly, this is a report coming out of Tuttosport in Italy, they have, according to reports, considered a move. They just want a little bit of depth here before you scoff at this one, Rick, but they are considering a move for Juventus midfielder Sami Khedira. This one is, if this one were to take place, I don't think it will go through, but this would be ridiculous because then Juve would be down to 4 midfielders in the whole squad, which is absurd to start with. But then Juve would look very silly for letting Marchisio go for free, we're very likely to Monaco. Now, Juve, these reports go on to say that Juve are very confident that they will keep hold of their World Cup winner, Sami Khedira, of course, member of the 2014 German squad, not the 2018 French squad, and he will stay at the club according to these reports. But there is some interest from Paris Saint-Germain, maybe still Rabiot not secure. Who knows? Again, we don't know for sure until the window closes, but Khedira being linked, there are a few whispers about it to PSG. I can't see it taking place, but your thoughts, guys?
Khedira is going to be too hard. Even though he might slowly be seen as being on the outer at Juventus, I think depth, you are right, is the big issue. At the same time, PSG definitely need some sort of defensive/central midfield. I mean, I've also been hearing and whispers have been going around. Ivan Rakitic from Barcelona, the World Cup finalist with Croatia only a couple of months ago.
Not now, though, surely.
Well, the problem is Barcelona have to also balance their books. They have a very huge, it is now almost the biggest in Europe wage bill, and they also want to redevelop the Camp Nou. Now, PSG are willing to match and meet the €125 million release clause of the Croatian international. That one there's got a little bit more legs than Khedira.
Yeah, sure.
But I can't see even that move going ahead because Rakitic himself is incredibly loyal, and I think Khedira is now starting to show those signs with Juventus. So between the two of them, I can't see either man moving across to the French capital club.
Yeah, I can't see the Khedira one happening, just given the fact they've just lost Marchisio, meaning they're down to five midfielders. Losing Khedira would make it 4. Pjanic, Can, Bentancur, and Matuidi. If one of those goes down or 2 go down, then they're really thin. Also, we have to remember that Allegri loves Khedira.
Loves him.
Rates him extremely highly. So, yeah, I can't see this one happening.
Yeah, no, neither. Not at all. But they are the reports, and there are whispers about. As for the Rakitic one, no, it won't happen for me, and not this late. Not a big money move like that at this stage. And Rakitic off the back of the World Cup, of course, as well would demand serious money. But PSG always on the hunt for new blood.
You've also got to imagine who has Barcelona brought in this transfer window. They've brought in at least 2 to 3 midfielders of quality. I'm not saying they are of Rakitic quality, but they are quality players. All of a sudden, you've just signed Sergio Busquets onto that mega release clause contract extension. I'm not ruling it out of the realm of possibility, but more than likely, unlikely to occur is probably the way I'm putting it at the moment with the Croatian.
Well said. More than likely, unlikely. Spot on. Look, Paris Saint-Germain, I think their squad's right. I don't think that they really need anything else at this stage. I'm content with their squad, and I think that this squad, with Dani Alves back in the lineup, I think they've got a nice mix of players across the board. I'm content. They brought in some defensive backup. They've got Buffon in between the sticks now. I'm happy with where they're at. They've got some young players which they'll blood in the league. Any other question marks?
I wouldn't say question marks, but I don't think they're one shot, but they could probably use that little bit of depth in that midfield. Timothy Weah is the one they're bringing through this season, but between Rabiot, Lo Celso, and Verratti, still a little bit younger. Maybe Verratti's getting into that mid-20 range, but Di Maria is Di Maria, so I won't even include him. But yeah, I think they may be one short. I mean, Thiago Motta left. Yeah,
they've got Draxler as well still in the squad. Look, I'm content. I think they can build something special with this group. The attacking lineup looks good together. They're playing well together. I think that they're ready, and they don't need anything else until they lose one of their key pieces eventually.
It's interesting to see that Trapp and Areola are still there.
They are.
We thought one of them may leave.
Well, when we were talking about it yesterday, weren't we? Goalkeepers who could potentially move with Trapp and Areola. Surely they don't both stay. But then again, where would they go?
Well, this is the big question, because if either Trapp or Areola go to, say, Manchester City, well, they're genuine first-team goalkeepers. Yeah. Why would you then move for the best part of 6 months? It'd have to be a loan deal that would have to be arranged. That would be the only thing that would make sense.
There are one too many good goalkeepers in the planet at the moment. Honestly, these top clubs, there aren't too many that need goalkeepers of this quality. I just can't see where there'd be a potential fit. But I'll tell you what, Rick, I'd rather be the number 2 at City than the number 3 at Paris Saint-Germain.
More chance of getting some game time?
For sure. Well, who is the number 3 at the moment?
You might argue.
We don't know.
You might argue Areola, but you can also certainly argue Trapp, considering that Areola ultimately ended up with the number one at the end of last season.
Keep in mind for this PSG side as well that Mbappe's gone to another level. So that's not a new signing, but officially he is because he was loaned and then they bought him the 1st of July officially. But this is a very, very talented side with two of the best 5 players and more in the top 10 and 20 on the planet. So I'm excited for Paris Saint-Germain this season. Felipe Luis from Atletico still strongly linked, their number one target, they're saying.
Well, Jan Oblak, the Atletico Madrid goalkeeper, he's sort of either leaked a little bit of news the last couple of days saying, thank you very much for your services at Atletico Madrid, but I think you are off. So
okay.
I think this is more the inside word and someone spilling something that they shouldn't have rather than the actual move eventuating between the two clubs naturally as discussions advance. So we wish the Brazilian all the best on his adventure when he makes it across to the French capital club in the next 10 days.
We have about 20 minutes to go in this first hour here live on Facebook. Plenty more still to come. We've got the latest on Zinedine Zidane and Manchester United. There's been some comments made on that. Stay tuned. And while at United, Mino Raiola, another controversial agent, and Paul Scholes have been engaged in a war of words regarding Paul Pogba. We'll save that for later on in the show. And also, of course, the preview of all the action tomorrow morning in the UEFA Champions League. Now, there was a couple of interesting comments made overnight just regarding on a couple of UK broadcasts, which I wanted to put to you guys and to all of our listeners, regarding, Alan Shearer actually made these comments. Of course, Alan Shearer, the top goal scorer in Premier League history, came out and made comments regarding Sergio Aguero. Now, just as we shift our focus to England, came out and said that Aguero, off the back of his heroics at the weekend, another hat-trick, he's joined the top 10 goal scorers in the history of the competition, came out and said, I quote, the best foreign player to ever play in the Premier League.
Ooh,
it's a big comment to make.
Big comment.
Yeah. Straight away, I disagree, just given the fact Ronaldo won a Ballon d'Or at Manchester United.
Thierry Henry wasn't bad
was the
either.
other one. Dennis
Wasn't
Bergkamp
bad.
wasn't too bad either.
They weren't bad.
Yeah.
That is a big, big comment to make. Alan Shearer, obviously full of respect for Aguero, and he has been sensational for, I suppose, his generation of Manchester City. But that is an enormous comment to make, given Ronaldo, Henry, Bergkamp, and there are others as well who have really performed at a high level in the Premier League.
I'm sure he could justify it, I think. I still disagree, but I'm sure he could justify it, just given the fact how consistent Aguero has been at Manchester City. Proven goal scorer.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, he did join the top 10. And look, what was it, Rick? About 48 goals, I think, to second. So he's a couple of seasons, a couple of good, solid seasons away from, well, he's still a long way to go to get Shearer, but a couple of seasons to go where he, a couple of 20-goal seasons where he'll be in the top 2 or 3.
He'll overtake Andy Cole. Andy Carroll. That would have been very interesting.
Wayne Rooney's number 2. So
yes.
a big opportunity for him to cement himself as, yes, the best foreign player in the history of the competition. But a big, bold comment made regardless. While with England, David Beckham, Ricky mentioned off the top, will get the UEFA President's Award for 2018 next week at the Champions League draw in Monaco. Chefrin hailing the former England captain as a true football icon of his generation. Very well deserved.
Agreed. He's done everything on the football field. He's worked with UNICEF, especially over the last 10 years that I can recall. Sensational. So, well done to the England international and everything and all the plaudits that do come his way. Yeah,
really powerful figure. Of course, now involved with the Miami MLS franchise, which is, I've seen firsthand from when it started back in 2013, 2014. Very interesting project, been a long-term project. He's had lots of issues to deal with, but just given his stature, they've found a way, and it will go ahead, and they'll be up and running in a season or two.
Yeah, I believe he said he gave up 20 times on that project before he finally got it through. So well done to him on this award. Well,
I can tell you why he would have given up, because the Miami, wonderful city, Miami, wonderful, wonderful place, but the Miami-Dade City Council is a difficult one to deal with, and he actually wanted to build a stadium on one of the islands that connects the Miami Bay with South Beach and Miami Beach, and it was quite a lot of work, and there were obviously quite a lot of issues to deal with for that. And I'm not so sure exactly how he went in regards to building a training facility or whatnot, but they've now just decided that it will be built on the mainland of Miami, and the beach will be kept us a beach, and that's about it. But look, in the end, they've reached an agreement. I don't know if you've seen the crest and the colours, but it's a pink and black type setup, a bit of a Paledmore setup. Quite an attractive brand, and it looks like that they will be very successful. And I can tell you, they will be very keen to lure some big names from European football, obviously in the twilight of their career when they get underway. I've always had a hunch that Ronaldo would be the one they'd go after, Cristiano, of course. But now with the 4 years at Juve, maybe not the case. But they'll be looking for big names, of course. They get underway season after next in the MLS. So big story for David Beckham. And just the last one out of England, well, at his former club, Manchester United, Mourinho and Martial. He wants him out. So he wants him out. The player who reportedly wants to fight for his place, he wants him out just because he doesn't like him anymore.
At least, you know what? There's 8 days to go in the European transfer window. At least the Frenchman now has a little bit more certainty about his possible destiny, or at least his interest at the club. It's been a long saga. It's been really going on for the last 6 weeks, but now there's finally a little bit more clarity. Where he goes, well, anybody's guess. That's going to be the big...
Has there been anywhere rumoured?
Not particularly. I mean, there was the link to PSG at one stage, but as we've discussed
with
a
everyone
few
else
times, that's the other thing. We have discussed it with everybody else.
Could he go back to Monaco?
That's my hint.
You brought that up before.
I think that is where he will ultimately go. I think he'll fit in alongside the likes of Stefan Jovetic, Radamel Falcao, Remy Lopez will probably be the one that ultimately might have to give way in that team, and Jovetic switches to the right. And with no Alexander Golovin yet in this Monaco team, when he would come back into the team naturally, that quartet would be very, very nice and might even boost their chances of a top 3 finish and, dare I say it, maybe even challenge PSG. Now, it's a long way away, but I think when you add that sort of class into that team, I think it goes a long way.
Okay. Well, I think that would make the most sense, particularly at this late stage if he were to move on. He was linked to Juventus, remember?
Yes.
The back end of last season, very strongly linked, and that all changed when Ronaldo became a target for them. But Martial maybe will find his best football again, you'd hope, back in Ligue, should it be the case. The last one, Mkhitaryan, saying fans must be patient with Emre's style of playing. I hope Arsenal do well this season. I really, really do. It's been a long decade, I suppose, in the back end of Wenger's tenure at the club, and I really hope that they can find their feet. A difficult start to the season against 2 of the best 3, in my opinion, but a big opportunity for Unai Emery, his style of playing, and look, a fresh face, a fresh voice at the club. I hope we see Arsenal back in the top 4 of the EPL.
Yeah, I think if there's one team in Europe that need to be patient, it is Arsenal.
Absolutely.
Because I think, like you mentioned, they played Man City and Chelsea, who I have in the top 3 at the moment of the English Premier League. Results will come once they play the lower sides in English football, and I can see them absolutely dominating games. Once they start to click under Emery, who, like you said, first manager in 20 years, Arsene Wenger was there for 20 plus years.
Of course.
It's a massive change to go through, and it's not going to happen overnight.
Absolutely. Patience is an absolute must. And again, it's always been the case, I suppose, but the quality is there. They have such wonderful players, wonderfully technical, gifted players in this squad. You just feel it's a matter of time until they figure it out. There is too much quality there for them to disappoint again. And I feel that this will be, if they are patient, they will reap the rewards.
Well, they have figured something out, I reckon, in that match against Chelsea when they were 2-0 down and then somehow grinded their way back to a 2-2 draw before ultimately losing 3-2. So obviously the players themselves, now whether it was the halftime hustle, whether it was something that clicked in the team, that they finally realised how to play with one another, they got there.
Yep.
And they got themselves back into the game. So maybe it might just take another match or 2 to ultimately understand the Unai Emery philosophy of playing, and it won't take very long at all.
They had their chances to win against Chelsea. I don't know if you saw Aubameyang's chance. He hit it over the bar from no more than 5 yards out. They had their chances to win.
Yep, absolutely. And look, that's what we did say last week in the lead-up. They need to score first and foremost. Had they lost that game 2-3-0, we wouldn't be so positive, I think, of Arsenal. But they will take something from that performance. And if they are patient, as Mkhitaryan has said, bigger and better things certainly to come. Just over to Italy. You mentioned yesterday that Aussie potential fine. no further news on that, but there was another report published saying that, look, obviously it's not ideal and this cannot be tolerated going forward as it is now a rule. So if you missed our program yesterday, the captain's armbands cannot be tampered with anymore. The Atalanta captain, Pablo Gomez, used to design it. I don't know why, but De Rossi has reportedly put some red tape or something over it, probably Roman related, and he risks a fine or a ban of some sort. It's a rule which needs to be adhered to going forward, so that will need to be respected. Elsewhere, Luciano Spalletti has been fined €10,000 for insulting a referee post-match. Okay, so problems already at Inter off the back of that 1-0 defeat, Rick, to Sassuolo.
Talk about pressure already starting to mount if you're copping a €10,000 fine for basically saying the referee was not good enough and a few decisions went against your own team. Well, Nerazzurri fans, you might be in for a longer season than everyone thought.
He's making more headlines, Spalletti, because reports out of Inter are suggesting that he has frozen out, well, is he now current or former Italian international Khedira? He's frozen him out. He's ordered him to the bench while the club find him a new club.
Well, he was linked with a loan move away to Monaco in the whole Keita Balde scenario, or transfer saga that ultimately saw the former Monaco player join the Nerazzurri. So he's 31, Khedira. He really is on the outer in both.
What's happened to him? Because I recall saying a couple of years ago, when Italy still are quite poor at international level, but when they were very poor in the lead up to Euro 2016, I really recall Khedira being one of the only shining lights in that squad at the time. And I thought for club and country, he was very good. He was linked to Barcelona back then as well. What's happened in the space of 24 months?
It's this simple. He left Lazio and he went to Inter. That is it. It's as simple as that. Let's not convolute it any more than that.
That's coming straight from a Juventus fan.
No bias at all.
No bias. No, why should I? I mean, this style of play that the Biancocelesti were playing with him in the team really suited his game, and that's where he took it to the next level. That's where your Barcelonas, your Inters really, really started to take notice of him. All of a sudden, he's gone to a new team, new style of football. Don't think it ultimately matches the way he likes to play. And what's the result? Well, you might be looking for a new club. It's as simple as that.
At a much lower level as well. Not that Monaco are, but perhaps now, given where we're at, he might be playing his football at a significantly lower level, which isn't great. And I'd imagine that a similar result to what happened with Marquisio will happen here. They may just mutually agree to rescind the contract. He'll move on, free transfer, free agent, and can do as he pleases. So interesting there. And then it's the last one in Italy. The current Arsenal CEO being linked with a move to AC Milan. I think that's a positive sign, but how close are they to a deal here?
Well, the reports that are emerging out of the UK are suggesting it's actually pretty close. It's not too far away. The wage, I think it's about €4 million a season, is more or less agreed. But Ivan Gazidis, the current CEO at Arsenal, basically wants reassurances from Elliott Fund Manager, who are the owners of AC Milan, that they actually are willing to invest capital into the club and that they're not going to have another Arsenal situation that they had with Arsene Wenger, where essentially the money wasn't being spent when it was required, despite the war chest being developed over the years with the player sales. So it's a fairly close deal. It's just obviously the dots haven't been done, the T's haven't been crossed. So give it a couple more weeks.
Okay, we'll wait for those dots to be done then. The last one out of Italy before we wrap up the other news and wrap up the program. We touched on it earlier regarding the Khedira potential switch to Paris Saint-Germain and what that would mean for the Juve midfield being down to 4. Bernardeschi, this is purely coincidental, but Bernardeschi has come out and spoken about potentially playing in a midfield capacity this season for the club and said that he'd be very happy to do that, I suppose, in light of all the quality they have up top, despite his positive performance at the weekend and last-minute winner. So we could potentially see Bernardeschi maybe used on the right side of midfield to maybe complement a Pjanic and Emre Can or Matuidi three-man midfield there. So perhaps another option off the back of those, again, coincidental in terms of timing, comments made by the young Italian international.
Again, it just shows how flexible Juventus are at the current stage. And I wouldn't mind seeing that, Bernardeschi in midfield. I think he'd, like you said, add another layer to that Juventus side. And
probably another reason as to why, Damon, you're suggesting that Juve probably have the most pressure on them to win the Champions League. Yes, the financial side is one thing which I was arguing strongly, but I guess you are right here. The adaptability of this group and the squad to play in multiple positions. Think about Cuadrado can play right wing, right mid, right back. He could really play on any line of the park. And Alexandro, we saw last year, play as a left attacking winger and actually score a couple of crucial goals. There are multiple players in this side. Mario Mandzukic, he's a traditional centre forward, but his work rate tracking back is as good as any defender in world football. There are multiple players who can play multiple positions, and I think that maybe adds another layer to their game, which you don't see at PSG and Man City as much.
Yeah, another one is Cancelo. He was playing right wing a bit in pre-season.
Yep.
So I think we spoke about it before, about who could win the Champions League. I think Juventus are primed a little bit more than the likes of Man City, Barcelona and PSG.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. I just think the financial investments made over a longer period by PSG and City mean it's not now or never, because I said it was now or never for them last season, but it's getting to a point now where we're going to need to see some return. And the interesting element of that, Rick, is, as you said before, even if they win, it doesn't mean that they earn the full return on that investment. You don't get €1 billion for winning the UEFA Champions League, but that is reward for the investment. That's what they need to see. You invest in something, you want to see some sort of return, correct, whether it be emotional return, just something to...
Or a lure even to the club from other players.
And sponsors and marketing, you need the success in order to grow in that capacity. Then you start to see the financial return.
That's right.
I guess that's just the way business works, isn't it? All right, wrapping up some of the other stories. 5 minutes to go here in this Facebook Live hour. Just in Spain, we touched on Rakitic. We touched on Rabiot. Barca still interested in Rabiot. I just get the feeling he's not going anywhere, to be honest. I think he's staying at Paris Saint-Germain. But Barca have close. Close. Loan move for Rafinha to Betis. Obviously, Betis, we discussed, they have lost a couple of key players, but they do have the very busy schedule this season with the Europa League and obviously La Liga. So close to being done, I think beneficial for both parties.
Yeah, so Mezinho, the father of Rafinha and Thiago Alcantara, he's actually in Andalusia at the moment, and they are obviously very close to agreeing a deal. I wonder, though, if all of a sudden maybe someone at Seville, maybe a Joaquin Caparros, might knock on Mezinho's door and say, well, look, we're also fairly close to being in the Europa League. If we can qualify, maybe your son might want to play with us. So I think there might be a little bit of space to go between the two. But at this stage, Real Betis, the green and whites, will more than likely be getting the signature of the Brazilian.
There you go. And just a quick update on Luka Modric and that situation, which we've had covered all week. They're considering, Real, filing a complaint against the agent for offering him. So there have been conflicting reports all week. This has been a very strange saga.
Messy.
Very messy. Regardless, there was interest from one end or two ends to get involved in this deal. But now they're suggesting that the agent has offered the player to the club, and they're not happy with that. There were reports saying that Modric offered himself. Then there were reports of people apologising for things they did or may not have done. Look, in the end, a very messy saga. I'm just curious to see now how this impacts Modric in a Real shirt. Do you think it could have any impact whatsoever, or does his legacy and everything he's achieved at the club not interfere with that at all?
I don't think it will. I think he's a quality player, and I think he didn't mention himself, but there were reports saying if he didn't get the move to Inter, he wouldn't force his way out. He wouldn't throw a tantrum as such. So I don't think it will affect his performances on the pitch.
I think it's just a bit too early to call. I mean, considering it's the second match of the season coming up this weekend.
Well, he's barely played.
He's been at a World Cup final. Ask me in about 3 months' time, and that's when we'll know the exact answer. If he's been completely frozen out, if Isco is the preferred option by Julen Lopetegui, that's when we'll know, okay, well, this may have had actually a serious impact on his future at Los Blancos.
I guess we'll all know in 3 months' time. But no, I take your point. It's too early to tell. Hopefully not, though. Hopefully not, because Real, if they want to maintain any level of success, then they need this player really firing on all cylinders. Are we bidding farewell to you shortly?
We are.
We'll bid farewell to you now, Damon. Thank you for joining
us.
us. Damon will be back in the second hour as we continue in the studio talking all things European and international football. We'll recap all of those headlines and we'll obviously preview what's to come tomorrow morning. 3 more UEFA Champions League fixtures ahead of the August 30 draw next week in Monaco, where they will hand out, Rick, those awards: the UEFA Best Men's Player, UEFA Best Women's Player, the goalkeeper, defender, midfielder, striker of the year, and obviously the award to David Beckham there from Chefrin, the UEFA President's Award for 2018. So lots still to come. We will cover the latest transfer news out of Germany and more in Spain, France and Italy as well. Just a quick update, this move for Lookman, one of the highly rated youngsters in English football at the moment. Everton to Leipzig. It's still no resolution here.
No official word has been said that the move will be going ahead. It looks like Everton have actually said no to Lookman going away from the club. They want about 30 million at the moment, whereas Leipzig is not willing to offer. They're willing about 27, 28.
Okay.
So it is up.
A couple of million again. Incredible.
Do you reckon this one will happen by the end of the deadline day?
Well, they do have plenty of time on their side. If they want to make it happen, yeah, I think it will happen. But it depends on Everton. Everton are building a very nice project, and if they see him as part of that project, I think no. But if they want to offload, and if they're in the negotiation phase, then maybe yes, he does move on. That's where we'll leave it for now. We're about to move into our studio. As I said, stay tuned. FootballNationRadio.com, Football Nation Radio app, TuneIn Radio, wherever you're listening from. Stay tuned. Rick, Damon and I will be back with plenty more again, recapping those contract extensions, previewing the UEFA Champions League, and plenty more still to come right here on afternoons on FNR Football Nation Radio.